Story: Millionaire Husband Texted. Stuck at mom's for dinner. Love you. But pregnant wife was sitting 3 tables away. Imagine receiving a loving text from your husband, then looking up and seeing him 3 tables away with another woman. An illegal envelope that could change your entire future. Stay with Claire until the final moment, because what began as an affair became a fight for her family's legacy. If you enjoy stories where evidence defeats deception, subscribe to the channel and tell us when you first realized Grant had underestimated her. Now listen closely. The soft melody of a grand piano drifted through the elegant steakhouse as crystal glasses shimmered beneath warm amber lights. Conversations blended into a quiet symphony of laughter and expensive wine, the kind of atmosphere designed to make every guest believe the world outside had paused for just one perfect evening. Claire Bennett rested a gentle hand against the curve of her 7-month pregnant belly and glanced at the empty chair across from her. Her best friend was running late. She didn't mind. For the first time in weeks, she had allowed herself an evening away from doctor appointments, nursery shopping, and the endless preparations for motherhood. Grant had insisted she deserved a quiet dinner. "I'll be at mom's tonight," he had said that afternoon with a warm smile. "She keeps complaining she never sees me anymore." Claire had kissed his cheek before he left. She believed him. Her phone vibrated softly against the white tablecloth. A message from Grant. "Stuck at mom's for dinner. Love you." A small smile touched Claire's lips. She typed back, "Tell her I miss her. Drive safely." Before pressing send, she looked up as a waiter passed between the tables carrying a bottle of red wine. The movement briefly revealed the dining room beyond. Table 9. A familiar silver watch caught the light. Claire's thumb froze above the screen. No, it couldn't be. Her eyes lifted again. The man sitting beneath the pendant light laughed quietly before reaching across the table and taking the hand of the woman opposite him. Grant, her husband, the father of her unborn daughter. 3 tables away. The message remained glowing on her phone. "Stuck at mom's for dinner." Grant leaned closer to the woman, his expression relaxed in a way Claire hadn't seen for months. Across from him sat Vanessa Cole, the company's elegant chief financial officer. Her dark dress reflected the candlelight as she smiled with effortless confidence. Claire felt every sound inside the restaurant disappear. The piano still played. Servers still walked between tables. Wine continued pouring into crystal glasses. Yet everything around her seemed impossibly distant. She didn't cry. She didn't stand. She didn't call his name. Instead, years of quiet observation took over. She lowered her phone beneath the edge of the table and opened the camera. The screen reflected only enough light to capture what she needed. Grant squeezed Vanessa's hand. Not the polite gesture of colleagues. Not the reassuring touch of friends. Something slower. Comfortable. Practiced. The kind of touch that belonged to people who believed nobody was watching. Claire recorded every second. Then something even stranger happened. A man in a charcoal suit approached their table carrying a thin black envelope. Grant accepted it immediately. Vanessa looked around the restaurant before sliding the envelope toward herself. She opened it only a few inches. Inside were several legal documents secured with gold clips. Grant spoke quietly. Claire couldn't hear every word. Only fragments. "Before she signs. Timing has to be perfect. Everything becomes ours." Her heartbeat echoed louder than the piano. She zoomed in carefully. One page displayed the unmistakable letterhead of a prestigious Boston law firm. This wasn't simply dinner. This wasn't simply betrayal. Something else was happening. Something planned. Something involving paperwork. Claire ended the recording only when Grant smiled and gently pushed the envelope back toward Vanessa. For a long moment, she simply sat there, staring at the words still glowing on her unanswered message. "Love you." The lie wasn't what hurt most. It was how effortlessly he had written it while looking into another woman's eyes. Claire quietly locked her phone. Outside, rain had begun falling against the restaurant windows. Inside, nobody noticed the pregnant woman sitting alone at table 12. Nobody realized that, without raising her voice or leaving her chair, Claire Bennett had just witnessed the first crack in the perfect life she thought she was living. And before the night was over, she would discover that the woman across the room was never the greatest threat to her marriage. The black envelope was. People often believe betrayal begins the moment they catch someone lying. The truth is far crueler. Betrayal begins months earlier, when trust quietly teaches you to ignore the warning signs. 6 months earlier, Claire believed she was fortunate. Their lakefront home, the cream-colored nursery, and Grant's promise that Emily would have everything they never did all seemed secure. Friends envied their marriage. Business magazines admired Grant Bennett, the self-made millionaire who had transformed a struggling real estate company into one of Massachusetts' fastest-growing developers before turning 36. Journalists loved calling him a visionary. Investors called him fearless. Claire simply called him home. Few people knew Bennett Properties had begun with Claire's unpaid work and a loan secured by her family's land. Grant had promised never to forget. At least, not until success slowly changed the language of their marriage. It started with harmless explanations, late meetings, unexpected business dinners, weekend conferences. Then came the small disappearances. Grant stopped leaving his phone on the kitchen counter. Passwords changed without explanation. Calls ended the moment Claire entered the room. When she casually asked whether everything was all right, Grant laughed and kissed her forehead. "You're overthinking again." When she mentioned Vanessa Cole after seeing her name appear repeatedly in company emails, Grant smiled patiently. "Claire, she's my CFO. Nothing more. Nothing less." Claire wanted to believe him. She blamed pregnancy and exhaustion because Grant still brought flowers and attended appointments. But something had quietly disappeared. Not affection, presence. Sometimes Grant sat beside her without truly being there. His eyes wandered toward incoming emails. His thoughts remained somewhere inside boardrooms and investment meetings she no longer understood. When Grant canceled plans to assemble the crib, Claire built it alone and repeated the familiar excuse. He would make it up to them. Every canceled dinner, every forgotten anniversary reservation, every business trip extended without warning, every lonely evening. She always found a reason for Grant. Love had taught her patience. Success had taught Grant excuses. The distance settled gradually until silence felt normal. Claire didn't know that another woman had already become part of Grant's daily routine. She didn't know confidential meetings had begun happening outside the office. She didn't know legal documents were already changing hands behind polished restaurant tables. She only knew that the man who once rushed home to tell her every dream had gradually become someone who carefully edited every conversation. The night she walked into that elegant steakhouse, Claire believed she was about to enjoy dinner with a friend. She had no idea she was about to meet the truth that had been patiently waiting only 3 tables away. The loudest revenge is often silence. It leaves the guilty alone with the sound of their own heartbeat. Claire never walked toward table 9. For one impossible second, she considered it. She imagined placing Grant's phone beside his wine glass. She imagined asking Vanessa whether she enjoyed borrowing someone else's future. She imagined the entire restaurant turning to watch a marriage collapse beneath crystal chandeliers. Instead, she took one slow breath. Then another. The baby shifted gently beneath her hand, as if reminding her that every decision she made no longer belonged only to herself. Claire lowered her eyes to the screen of her phone. The recording was clear. Grant's hand covering Vanessa's. The black envelope. The fragments of conversation. Before she signs. Everything becomes ours. Nothing about the video proved an affair. Not yet. But it proved one thing beyond question. Grant had lied. She carefully saved the recording. Then she uploaded a copy to her cloud storage. Another to a password-protected folder. Years earlier, Grant had taught her that successful businesses survive because every important document existed in more than one place. Ironically, she had learned the lesson better than he ever expected. Across the room, Grant laughed again. The sound reached her like an echo from another lifetime. Claire looked at the message still waiting to be sent. "Tell her I miss her. Drive safely." She didn't delete it. She simply locked her phone. A waiter approached with a polite smile. "Would you like another sparkling water, ma'am?" Claire smiled back. "Actually, I'd like to send dessert to table 9. The waiter nodded. "Of course. Is there a special occasion?" "There is now." 10 minutes later, a white porcelain plate arrived at Grant's table. Dark chocolate lettering curved neatly across the center. "Dinner at your mother's looks lovely." Claire watched from a distance. Grant's smile disappeared instantly. His eyes froze on the words. Then they began searching the restaurant. Left, right, across the dining room, until they found her. 3 tables away. For several endless seconds, neither of them moved. Grant looked exactly as Claire had never seen him before. Not angry, not embarrassed. Afraid. Vanessa followed his gaze. The elegant confidence she had worn all evening dissolved almost immediately. She reached for the black envelope and quietly closed it before slipping it into her designer handbag. Grant pushed his chair backward. Too quickly. The legs scraped sharply across the marble floor. Several nearby guests looked over. Claire remained seated. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She simply held his gaze. The silence between them carried every unanswered question of the past year. Grant finally took one hurried step forward. Claire stood at exactly the same moment. She picked up her handbag, placed enough cash on the table to cover dinner she never ate, turned toward the restaurant entrance, and walked away. Every step sounded calm, measured, deliberate. She never looked back. By the time Grant reached the front doors, Claire was already standing beneath the covered entrance as rain painted silver lines across the city lights. Claire, she heard him. She kept walking. Her phone began vibrating almost immediately. Grant. She ignored it. Another call. Ignored. Then a message. It's not what you think. Another. Vanessa is a client. Another. Please answer me. Claire stopped beneath a street lamp. Without opening the messages, she took screenshots of every notification appearing on her lock screen. She knew enough about digital evidence to understand one simple truth. People often deleted what they had written. Screenshots remembered. She placed the phone back inside her purse. A taxi pulled to the curb. The driver opened the rear door. Where to? Claire hesitated only briefly before giving her home address. As the car disappeared into the rainy Boston streets, Grant remained standing beneath the restaurant awning, his expensive suit slowly darkening with mist. For the first time since they had married, he was no longer controlling the story. Inside Claire's purse rested a short video, 3 unanswered phone calls, several desperate messages, and one unforgettable lie. Grant believed the worst part of the evening had been getting caught. He had no idea the real investigation had only just begun. The truth rarely knocks on your front door. More often, it waits inside ordinary paperwork that nobody thinks to read. Claire barely slept that night. Rain continued tapping against the bedroom windows while Grant remained downstairs, pretending to answer emails long after midnight. Neither of them mentioned the restaurant. Neither of them mentioned Table 9. Silence settled over the house like fresh snow. Cold, heavy, impossible to ignore. At sunrise, Grant acted as though nothing had happened. He kissed Claire on the forehead before leaving for work. Big meeting today, he said with the same effortless smile she had trusted for years. Don't wait up for dinner. Claire smiled politely. Drive safely. The front door closed. Only then did she allow herself to breathe. She replayed the restaurant video again. Then again. Every pause revealed another detail she had missed. The expensive law firm's letterhead. The black envelope. Grant's hand pushing the documents toward Vanessa. Before she signs. Those 4 words refused to leave her mind. Signs what? The question echoed through her thoughts until one name surfaced. Ethan Brooks. Claire hadn't spoken to Ethan in nearly 3 years. Back in college, he had been the quiet student who always noticed details everyone else ignored. Today, he specialized in corporate litigation and financial investigations, earning a reputation for untangling complicated business disputes. If anyone could recognize the legal documents from a blurry video, it was Ethan. 2 hours later, Claire walked into his downtown Boston office. The room overlooked the harbor, its shelves lined with thick legal volumes and framed certificates. Ethan stood as soon as he saw her. Claire. His smile faded almost immediately when he noticed her expression. What happened? Claire didn't begin with accusations. She didn't mention an affair. She simply handed him her phone. Tell me what you see. For nearly 5 minutes, Ethan watched the recording without speaking. Then he paused the video, zoomed in, paused again. His eyes narrowed. Interesting. Claire leaned forward. What? He enlarged the first page visible inside the envelope. The image remained blurry, but one detail was unmistakable. The embossed logo belonged to Harrison and Blake LLP, one of Boston's most exclusive firms specializing in corporate restructuring, mergers, and asset transfers. Ethan looked up. These aren't divorce papers. Claire hadn't expected them to be. They're business documents. He nodded slowly. And very expensive ones. Using the Massachusetts corporate registry, Ethan found one important fact and stopped there. Claire Bennett Development LLC had been formed 3 weeks earlier. The public record listed the entity's name, registered office, and authorized managers, including Claire Bennett and Vanessa Cole. It did not reveal private ownership percentages, capital sources, or secret transfer terms. This proves the company exists, Ethan said. Not that anyone has committed a crime. Claire stared at the screen. I've never heard of it. Then we need documents you are legally entitled to review. He examined the restaurant video again and recognized the logo of Harrison and Blake LLP, a firm known for corporate restructuring. That fact also proved nothing by itself, but it connected the black envelope to Grant's new entity. Ethan advised Claire not to search Grant's devices or remove files from his office. Instead, she would request copies of any agreement requiring her signature and review the joint financial records she already had authority to access. The affair might explain the secrecy. Only the documents could explain the purpose. Claire whispered the words almost to herself. Before she signs, Ethan slowly nodded. I think your husband wasn't just lying about dinner. He closed the laptop. I think someone is preparing for you to sign something that could change who owns far more than your marriage. For the first time since leaving the restaurant, Claire understood that the woman sitting across from Grant had never been the center of the story. She had only been sitting beside it. The real secret had been hiding inside the envelope all along. The most powerful weapon against deception is not anger. It is evidence collected before the liar realizes the game has changed. That evening, Grant entered the nursery carrying a blue folder. He said the papers were routine protections for the baby, hospital directives, temporary authority for business matters, and consent related to several properties held through the marriage. Claire asked to read them overnight and have independent counsel review them. Grant's smile tightened. These have already been reviewed. By your lawyers, she answered gently. I need one who represents me. He tried affection, urgency, and finally irritation, but Claire did not sign. Because the documents had been presented to her, she lawfully kept a complete copy after Grant agreed she could review it. When he left the nursery with the originals, she photographed the version she had been given and sent it securely to Ethan. The private papers, not the public registry, showed the proposed transfers, the new company's 51-49 ownership structure, and a clause allowing Grant to force Vanessa's interest back to him under broad employment conditions. Grant barely spoke for the rest of the evening. He gathered the unsigned documents, slipped them back into the blue folder, and left the nursery without another excuse. His office door locked behind him. Claire felt not victorious, but awake. The following morning, Ethan called before 8. I kept digging. Claire stepped onto the back patio with a mug of untouched coffee. What did you find? More than I expected. Ethan had spent the night tracing corporate filings, archived emails attached to public permit applications, and property acquisition records connected to Cole Bennett development. The documents suggested Grant intended to move selected opportunities and capital into the new company. It isn't illegal to create another company, Claire said quietly. No. But moving jointly owned assets without proper disclosure becomes a very different conversation. Claire closed her eyes. So the authorization papers. They would have made the transfers much easier. Silence settled between them. Then Ethan spoke again. I think there's something else. An hour later they met in his office. This time, Ethan projected several documents onto a large screen. One filing listed Vanessa Cole as owning 49% of Cole Bennett development. Grant controlled the remaining 51. Claire stared at the numbers. So she's really his partner. On paper, Ethan clicked to another document. A confidential employment agreement had surfaced through a routine court filing connected to an unrelated commercial dispute. Buried inside the contract was a clause few people would ever notice. If Vanessa's employment ended, if her relationship with the company damaged its reputation, if she violated confidentiality, her ownership interest could automatically revert to Grant Bennett. Claire read the paragraph twice. Then a third time. He planned to remove her. Ethan nodded. Eventually, Claire now saw that Vanessa might also be disposable to Grant. Claire reviewed public permit applications and board materials she was already entitled to receive as a co-owner. They showed project timelines and Grant's approvals, but no private emails. Vanessa appeared ambitious, professional, intelligent, but nowhere did she appear to control the plan. The available records showed Grant directing the timeline for his own benefit. Claire leaned back slowly. I don't forgive her. I'm not asking you to. But I don't think she knows everything. Ethan remained quiet for several seconds before answering. I think you're right. That afternoon, Claire made a decision she never imagined making. She composed a single email. No accusations. No insults. No emotional speeches. Only one attachment. The page showing the ownership reversal clause. Beneath it, she wrote one sentence. Did Grant ever show you this? She pressed send. Nothing happened. 10 minutes. 30. An hour. No reply. As evening settled over Boston, Claire began believing Vanessa had deleted the message without opening it. Then, just before sunset, her phone vibrated. Unknown number. One text. Where did you get this? Claire looked toward the lake outside her window. The water reflected the fading orange sky, perfectly calm on the surface. Underneath, unseen currents pulled in opposite directions. She typed only 6 words. Because he lied to both of us. 3 dots appeared immediately, disappeared, returned again. Claire waited. Whatever answer came next would determine whether Vanessa remained part of Grant's carefully designed plan, or became the first person willing to help bring it crashing down. Sometimes the first person to uncover a monster is not the victim. It is the accomplice who suddenly realizes she was never meant to survive the plan. Vanessa didn't answer Claire's last message. Not immediately. Instead, another text arrived 30 minutes later. Can we meet somewhere private? No greeting. No denial. Only urgency. Claire showed the message to Ethan. He studied the screen for a moment before nodding. She sounds frightened. Or she's setting a trap. Possibly. He leaned back in his chair. If you meet her, you won't go alone. The following afternoon, Claire arrived at a quiet botanical garden cafe on the edge of Boston. It was quiet and discreet. Vanessa was already waiting. Vanessa arrived without the confidence Claire remembered and looked exhausted. For several long seconds, neither woman spoke. Finally, Vanessa slid her phone across the table. I opened the document you sent. Claire remained silent. I never saw that clause before. Claire studied her carefully. You expect me to believe that? I don't expect anything. Vanessa lowered her eyes. I just know Grant prepared every contract himself. He always said the lawyers handled the details. Claire almost laughed. Grant had used nearly the same explanation with her. Different woman. Same script. Vanessa continued. When we formed Claire Bennett Development, he said it would become our future. Our. She nodded bitterly. He told me he was already separated. Claire didn't react. He said the divorce was delayed because of the pregnancy. Grant had built separate realities for his wife and his business partner. Vanessa reached into her handbag. I found something after your email. She removed a small flash drive. I wasn't supposed to see it. Claire looked at the device, but didn't touch it. What is it? A recording from a strategy session. Carter policy required certain executive meetings to be recorded and distributed to participants for minute preparation. Vanessa had attended the meeting and retained the copy through her authorized company account. I listened to one after reading your message. Her voice trembled. There was a private discussion after everyone else left. Claire felt her pulse quicken. What did you hear? Vanessa swallowed. My name. Silence. And yours. She closed her eyes before repeating Grant's exact words. Once Claire signs, we move phase 2. Claire's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. There was more. Vanessa's voice became almost a whisper. He said, Vanessa still believes she's becoming a partner. Once the acquisitions close, we'll restructure ownership and buy her out. She'll never see it coming. The peaceful garden made the confession feel even colder. Claire slowly reached for the flash drive. This recording. It's real. Does anyone else know? Vanessa shook her head. I copied it before the server was updated. Claire looked directly into her eyes for the first time. Why give it to me? Vanessa laughed once. It wasn't happiness. It was humiliation. Because yesterday I finally understood something. She looked toward the fountain. I wasn't replacing you. Claire waited. I was standing in line behind you. The sentence lingered between them. Simple. Devastating. Grant hadn't loved either woman. He had simply assigned them different purposes. One provided trust. The other provided growth. Both were temporary. Vanessa stood from the table. I'll testify if it comes to that. Claire remained seated. Why? Vanessa looked back with tears she refused to let fall. Because if he could build 2 lies at the same time. She paused. Then there are probably others we haven't discovered yet. As Vanessa disappeared through the garden path, Claire held the small flash drive tightly in her hand. It weighed almost nothing. Yet somewhere inside that piece of plastic rested the sound of Grant Bennett confidently describing the future. He believed he was recording the blueprint of an empire. Instead, he had unknowingly preserved the evidence that could bring the entire empire down. Every empire falls twice. First in secret, when trust disappears. Then in public, when the truth finally finds a microphone. The annual Bennett Foundation Gala had always been Grant's favorite night of the year. Television cameras, business leaders, investors, politicians. Every influential face in Boston gathered beneath the crystal chandeliers of the Grand Regency Ballroom. Grant called it an evening of generosity. Claire now understood it was also an evening of appearances. 3 days before the gala, he personally invited her. "I'd like us to go together." His voice was gentle again, hopeful, as husband and wife. Claire looked at the invitation resting on the kitchen island. Gold lettering, black satin ribbon. Everything looked perfect. "I'll be there," she answered. Grant smiled with visible relief. For the first time in weeks, he believed the crisis was ending. He had no idea it was only beginning. The afternoon before the gala, Ethan met Claire and Vanessa inside his office. The flash drive had been professionally copied. The original remained untouched inside a sealed evidence envelope. They listened to the recording together. Grant's voice filled the room. Confident, calm, calculating. Once Claire signs, we move phase 2. Papers shuffled. Someone laughed quietly. Then Grant continued. Vanessa still believes she's becoming a partner. After the acquisitions close, legal will restructure everything. She'll receive a settlement and disappear. Silence followed. Even after hearing it several times, Vanessa still lowered her eyes. I actually believed him. Claire placed a hand gently over hers. You believed the version of him he wanted you to see. Ethan closed his laptop. This recording changes everything. It proves intent. It proves deception. But timing matters. Claire nodded. We wait. For what? She looked toward the ballroom invitation lying on the desk. For the moment when he believes he's already won. Saturday evening brought executives and photographers to the Grand Regency. Grant exited first. Perfect tuxedo. Confident smile. One hand extended toward Claire. She accepted it. To everyone watching, they looked like the picture of success. Inside, an orchestra played beneath chandeliers while the screens celebrated Bennett Foundation achievements. Grant greeted donors effortlessly, introduced Claire to investors, posed for photographs. His performance never slipped. Not once. Across the ballroom, Vanessa arrived alone. Several executives whispered immediately. Grant noticed. For only a second. Then he recovered his smile. Exactly as he always did. At precisely 8 o'clock, the charity presentation began. Grant stepped onto the stage to enthusiastic applause. Good evening, everyone. His polished voice filled the ballroom. Tonight we celebrate integrity, leadership, and the importance of building a legacy that future generations can trust. Claire almost closed her eyes. The irony was almost unbearable. Grant continued speaking about family, responsibility, honesty. The audience applauded again. Halfway through his speech, his assistant quietly approached the stage. She handed him a small note. Grant glanced at it briefly. His expression remained composed. But Claire noticed something almost invisible. His fingers tightened. The note contained only 4 handwritten words. She knows everything. Check backstage. Grant looked instinctively toward the ballroom entrance. Vanessa wasn't there anymore. Neither was Ethan. For the first time that evening, uncertainty crossed his face. A tiny crack, barely noticeable, but it existed. He finished the speech anyway. The audience rose for another standing ovation. Grant smiled, bowed, accepted the applause. He believed the evening remained under his control. Meanwhile, in a private room behind the ballroom, Ethan met the chair of Bennett Properties Audit Committee and the company's outside counsel. Earlier that day, Vanessa had submitted the recording, contracts, and a sworn account of how she obtained them. Counsel had authenticated the files and advised the committee to suspend the evening's strategic vote. The committee, not Claire, authorized the event technician to display a limited set of verified materials. The presentation would state clearly that an investigation was beginning, not that a court had reached a verdict. Claire watched the giant screens above the ballroom. They still displayed charitable donations and smiling families. Soon, they would display questions Grant could no longer prevent the board from asking. Grant descended from the stage, shaking hands with investors who congratulated him on his inspiring words. He had spent years building his reputation one speech at a time. He never imagined that before the night ended, the same screens celebrating his legacy could become the place where his own voice would testify against him. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive wearing handcuffs. Sometimes it simply waits for the lights to dim. The room became silent long before the truth began speaking. Sometimes justice arrives with sirens. Sometimes it arrives through a speaker system everyone thought was built for applause. Grant had just stepped down from the stage when Margaret Shaw, the independent board chair, approached the microphone. "The strategic vote is suspended," she announced. "Outside counsel has received materials requiring immediate review." Only then did the ballroom lights dim. Guests understood that what followed was an authorized board disclosure, not a private ambush. The orchestra stopped. Conversation faded. Hundreds of eyes turned toward the giant projection screens suspended above the ballroom. Grant smiled confidently. Then the first image appeared. Not a charity photograph. A corporate filing. Claire Bennett Development, LLC. Grant's smile froze. His head snapped toward the audiovisual booth. "What is this?" he whispered. No one answered. The second image followed. Ownership percentages. Grant Bennett. Vanessa Cole. A ripple of confused murmurs spread through the audience. Investors leaned closer. Board members exchanged uncertain glances. Then the documents disappeared. Only a black screen remained. 1 second. 2. 3. A familiar voice broke the silence. Grant's own. "Once Claire signs, we move phase 2. The ballroom fell silent. The recording continued. "Vanessa still believes she's becoming a partner." Grant looked toward the control room and started walking, then running. Security instinctively stepped into his path, believing he was attempting to interfere with the presentation. His own voice continued echoing through every speaker. "After the acquisitions close, legal will restructure everything." Several executives recognized the meeting. Grant struggled to push past security. "Turn it off." His voice cracked. "No." The final sentence filled the ballroom. "She'll receive a settlement and disappear." After 3 seconds of silence, whispers spread across the room. Reporters turned their cameras toward Grant. He no longer controlled the narrative. Claire remained standing near the center of the ballroom. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She simply watched. Not with satisfaction. With certainty. Across the room, Vanessa stepped forward. "I have something to say." Every camera turned toward her. "My name is Vanessa Cole." She paused. "I believed I was entering a legitimate business partnership." She looked directly at Grant. "I was wrong." She held up the duplicate contracts. "The ownership clauses were hidden from me." Gasps rippled across the audience. Grant opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Then Ethan approached with outside board counsel and the sealed evidence log. These materials were obtained from authorized recipients, preserved in their original form, and delivered to the audit committee for independent review. He wasn't making a threat. He was announcing a fact. Grant finally found his voice. "This is a misunderstanding." No one interrupted him. No one defended him either. His words simply disappeared into the silence. Because everyone had already heard his own recording. It required no interpretation, no explanation, no spin. Investors stepped away while directors gathered around outside counsel. Margaret Shaw approached Grant and spoke with the restraint of someone protecting both the company and the process. "You are on administrative leave, effective immediately. Outside counsel will contact you Monday." Grant stood alone beneath the crystal chandeliers he had admired only minutes earlier. The applause he expected had become whispers. The admiration he cultivated had become distance. Claire slowly walked past him. Grant reached toward her. "Claire." She stopped. Not because she wanted answers. Because she wanted him to hear one final truth. "You spent years believing signatures gave you power." She looked into his eyes. "You forgot that character signs every decision long before ink ever touches paper." She continued walking. No dramatic music followed. No triumphant speech. Only the soft sound of her heels crossing polished marble as she left the ballroom, carrying the one thing Grant could never reclaim. Her dignity. Behind her, cameras continued flashing, but the real consequences unfolded away from them. The independent investigation later confirmed undisclosed conflicts, attempted transfers without proper disclosure, and misleading statements to the board. Grant resigned. The disputed transactions were canceled. Claire's divorce moved through the Massachusetts courts, where temporary orders preserved marital property and a parenting plan protected their daughter. Vanessa cooperated with investigators and accepted responsibility for the affair without pretending she had been innocent. 3 months later, Claire gave birth to Emily. She did not inherit Grant's company, and no courtroom magically repaired her life. She rebuilt it through ordinary victories, reading every document, choosing her own counsel, and never surrendering her voice again. Grant had believed signatures created power. Claire learned that informed consent and the courage to say no could take that power back. In the weeks after Emily came home, Claire received letters from older women who had seen the gala coverage and recognized their own years of signing papers they did not understand. She answered none publicly, but she saved one sentence from a retired teacher in Vermont. Courage is not always leaving first. Sometimes it is asking one more question. Claire framed those words beside the nursery door. Each night, when Emily woke and the house felt too quiet, Claire remembered that rebuilding did not happen beneath chandeliers. It happened in ordinary rooms, through honest conversations, careful choices, and the decision to trust herself again. The scandal eventually disappeared from the news. The lesson did not.